What if the secret to a longer, healthier life was actually being alone? That question might feel uncomfortable at first. For decades, we've been told that aging well means staying socially active, surrounding ourselves with others, and avoiding solitude at all costs. Loneliness, we're told, is dangerous. Isolation is the enemy. But what if we've misunderstood something essential about what it means to be alone? After 60, something shifts. The roles we've played for most of our lives begin to dissolve. Careers wind down. Children grow up. The social circles we relied on start to shrink. And in the quiet spaces that remain, we meet ourselves. For some, that meeting is uncomfortable. For others, it becomes the most powerful moment of their entire lives. Solitude, when embraced consciously, is not the same as loneliness. It's a sacred space, a source of clarity, renewal, and even healing. Across cultures and centuries, some of the world's longest living individuals, those who reach their 80s, 90s, even past 100, have shared something in common, a quiet inner world that sustains them, especially when the outer world changes. In this video, we're going to explore 5 surprising, science-backed reasons why embracing solitude after 60 can radically improve your health, your mind, and your spirit. These aren't just theories. They're patterns observed in real lives, real people who've unlocked a quieter, deeper wisdom. You'll hear about habits, choices, and moments that many overlook, and how those simple shifts can make the difference between decline and renewal. But don't just watch this to feel inspired. Watch it to feel prepared, because learning to be at peace with your own company might just be the most important skill for this next chapter of your life. Comment number 1, if you're ready to discover what solitude after 60 is really about. Let's start with something many people overlook: how silence itself can become medicine. When the body is constantly surrounded by noise, TVs, phones, conversations, traffic, it stays on high alert. The nervous system remains activated, even in retirement, even at home. Cortisol, the body's primary stress hormone, stays elevated. Over time, this invisible tension weakens the immune system, disrupts sleep, raises blood pressure, and slowly chips away at emotional stability. But something remarkable happens in moments of true quiet. Not loneliness, not boredom, but intentional, welcomed stillness. In those moments, the body exhales, cortisol drops, heart rate slows, inflammatory markers decrease. The parasympathetic nervous system, the body's rest and repair mode, comes online. Healing begins, not through medication, but through a kind of inner exhale. Helen understood this intuitively. After her husband died, the house became quiet. But instead of running from it, she leaned in. Each morning she began walking in the forest behind her home. No headphones, no distractions. Just her breath, the sound of leaves, the rhythm of her steps. Over time, she noticed a shift. Her sleep improved. Her digestion became smoother. Her energy returned. George, on the other hand, did what many do. He kept noise all around him. The television stayed on from breakfast until late at night. He played old radio stations to avoid silence. When he wasn't consuming noise, he was on the phone, not to connect deeply, but to escape being alone. And slowly, he noticed the consequences. His blood pressure crept up. His sleep fragmented. Anxiety became a constant hum beneath his day. Science backs what Helen experienced. A 2016 study from the journal Brain Structure and Function found that just 2 hours of silence per day can lead to the development of new brain cells in the hippocampus, the area responsible for memory, learning, and emotion. Silence, it turns out, isn't just peaceful. It's regenerative. Solitude doesn't have to be a sentence. It can be a sanctuary. And the quietest spaces, when entered with intention, often become the most healing. Now, moving to the second factor that silently affects longevity: clarity of mind. After 60, the brain begins to change. Processing speed slows, names slip away, distractions become harder to filter. But what many people don't realize is that this decline isn't inevitable. In fact, one of the simplest ways to preserve mental clarity, especially in later years, is by reducing external noise and increasing intentional solitude. The brain thrives in stillness. Without the constant demand to respond, explain, or absorb, the mind begins to organize itself. Thoughts settle, priorities become clear, memory sharpens, and perhaps most important of all, decision-making improves. Helen built her days around this principle. She limited her inputs. She didn't rush to check the news in the morning or fill every hour with activity. Instead, she carved out space, sometimes 10 minutes, sometimes an entire afternoon, to simply sit, to think, to breathe. And over time, her clarity became a kind of superpower. She handled family issues with grace. She remembered birthdays, appointments, even recipes from decades ago. Her doctor once told her she had the mind of someone 20 years younger. George had a different experience. With the radio humming, the television chattering, and the phone always in hand, his mind rarely had a chance to rest. He began to forget small things: keys, medications, conversations from the day before. He laughed it off at first, calling it just age. But deep down, he started to worry. Was this how it all began? Recent research from the University of California suggests that environments with high levels of ambient noise and constant stimulation can impair working memory and slow cognitive processing, especially in older adults. In contrast, brief periods of silence and solitude have been shown to enhance neural connectivity and improve focus. Helen's mind stayed sharp, not because she did crossword puzzles or played memory games, though she did those too, but because she gave her mind space to breathe. George, without realizing it, had created a mental fog by never allowing quiet to enter his day. Solitude is not a void. It is a vessel. And when filled with presence, it becomes one of the most powerful tools for protecting the mind. Here's the third behavior that slowly undermines your health: the refusal to sit with your own emotions. Many people carry decades of unresolved feelings: grief, regret, guilt, even anger, layered quietly beneath the surface. And often, the noise of life becomes a shield. As long as the television is on, the schedule is full, and someone else is around, there's no need to look inward. But after 60, when external demands fade, something begins to rise. The emotional backlog, the stories we never told ourselves, the truths we tried to forget. Solitude brings those feelings forward. And while that can be uncomfortable at first, it's also one of the most powerful forms of emotional healing. Helen knew this pain well. After her husband died, the silence in the house was deafening, not because of the absence of sound, but because of the presence of emotion. In that silence, she faced her grief, not by pushing it away, but by welcoming it. She cried without distraction. She wrote letters to her husband she never sent. She walked and prayed and spoke aloud to the trees when the ache became too much to carry inside. And something shifted. The grief didn't disappear, but it softened. It no longer controlled her. It lived beside her, quietly, as part of her story, not her identity. George, meanwhile, did everything he could to stay distracted. He kept himself busy with errands he didn't need to run. He filled his evenings with old sports reruns and constant background noise. But the grief was still there, unprocessed. It leaked out in unexpected ways: irritability, sudden tears, difficulty sleeping. His body began to carry what his heart refused to face. Studies from the Journal of Psychosomatic Research have shown a direct link between repressed emotions and chronic illness in older adults. Conditions like hypertension, digestive issues, and fatigue often have roots not just in biology, but in emotion. Healing begins with awareness, and awareness requires stillness. Solitude invites honesty, and honesty invites release. When we allow ourselves to be still, to listen inwardly, to feel what we've been avoiding, we begin to clear space for peace, for joy, and for a kind of emotional freedom that many never realize is possible. Up next, the fourth sign that many people dismiss: mistaking solitude for loneliness and missing the deeper connection it can create. It sounds like a contradiction, but it's one of the most fascinating patterns in aging well. People who are at peace alone often build stronger, deeper relationships with others, while those who fear solitude tend to form more fragile, superficial connections. Why? Because true connection starts from within. Helen's life offers a quiet but powerful example. She never sought to be the center of attention. She didn't attend every event or force herself into crowded spaces. Instead, she nurtured a few deep, meaningful relationships. A neighbor she'd known for years, a former student who visited monthly, a niece she wrote to every week. Because she wasn't clinging to others to fill an internal emptiness, she offered something rare: presence. Her time was intentional, her conversations unhurried, and as a result, people felt safe around her, seen, loved. George, on the other hand, began to feel lonely long before he was ever truly alone. Even at barbecues or family gatherings, he felt distant. The conversations felt shallow. The laughter didn't reach his heart. He thought he needed more people. But what he really needed was to be okay with himself first. His fear of solitude made him grasp for connection. But that kind of grasping rarely brings closeness. It brings exhaustion. Psychologists call this the attachment paradox. When we fear being alone, we attach for survival. But when we are at peace within ourselves, we connect for joy. And those joyful connections, fewer in number but deeper in quality, have been shown to lower inflammation, reduce risk of dementia, and even lengthen life expectancy. In Okinawa, where some of the world's longest living women reside, elders often spend hours alone, tending plants, meditating, preparing meals in silence. But when they gather, the warmth is palpable. Their solitude hasn't made them cold. It's made them radiant. Solitude doesn't isolate us from others. It prepares us to meet them with more grace, more truth, and more compassion. As we move forward, there's a fifth pattern that deserves attention: how inner calm directly supports physical longevity. We often talk about diet, exercise, and sleep as the pillars of a long life, and they are. But there's another element just as powerful and often overlooked: the state of your inner world. How often you feel calm. How often you breathe deeply. How often you sit in silence without needing to fix, prove, or chase anything. This inner peace is not just spiritual, it's biological. Helen's doctor, who's been treating patients for over 30 years, once said she had the most stable vital signs he had ever seen in a woman her age. Her heart rate was steady, her blood pressure rarely fluctuated, Her lab results were consistently within range. She didn't live on supplements or strict regimens. Instead, she lived in rhythm, with nature, with her thoughts, with her breath. That calm was her medicine. George, in contrast, experienced the typical wear and tear of aging, but magnified. His blood pressure was erratic. He often felt tired but couldn't sleep. His appetite came and went. He visited the clinic more often, not for major crises, but for a steady stream of small discomforts, a tight chest, an upset stomach, a persistent ache in the joints. His body was speaking what his mind hadn't yet addressed: unrest. In regions known for exceptional longevity, like Sardinia in Italy and Nicoya in Costa Rica, one surprising commonality is the presence of quiet routines. People rise with the sun, move slowly, eat simply, and spend significant time in reflection or prayer. Not because they were taught to do so, but because it was part of how they remained whole. The nervous system doesn't know the difference between a real threat and constant mental noise. If you never let your mind rest, your body stays in defense mode. Muscles tighten, inflammation rises, recovery slows. But when the mind feels safe, the body follows. Healing accelerates, energy returns, systems regulate. Solitude, embraced as a practice, not as a punishment, creates this kind of peace. And peace, in turn, builds a foundation the body can thrive upon. Let me share the sixth reason why many fail to maintain good health: the absence of spiritual grounding in later life. After 60, questions start to shift. They move from, "What do I need to do today?" to, "What does it all mean?" For many, this transition creates anxiety. The calendar grows emptier. Roles change. The mirror reflects not just age, but mortality. And in that space, a quiet panic can begin to rise, unless something deeper holds you. That something is spiritual, grounding, not necessarily religion, though for some it is, but a connection to something beyond the self, a sense of meaning, a rhythm. A still, steady place inside that offers guidance when the world outside begins to lose its familiar form. Helen cultivated this connection slowly, with reverence. She began each day not with headlines or emails, but with stillness. A candle. A verse. A moment of gratitude whispered into the morning air. Over time, these simple rituals became more than routine. They became anchors. When life brought challenges, medical scares, family struggles, the ache of aging, she did not collapse under them. She returned to center. She breathed. She listened. And often, in that quiet, she found her way. George struggled to find this center. He considered himself practical, not spiritual. But as the years unfolded and the noise of daily life faded, he felt adrift. Holidays that once brought joy began to feel hollow. Milestones passed without ceremony. He tried to fill the space with tasks, but meaning is not built through distraction. It's built through presence. A study published in the Journal of Aging and Health found that older adults with a sense of spiritual purpose, whether through religion, meditation, nature, or personal reflection, were significantly more resilient in the face of illness, loss, and life transitions. Their levels of depression were lower. Their outlook on aging was more hopeful. And remarkably, their bodies reflected that hope. Helen's vitality wasn't just in her steps, it was in her spirit. George's fatigue wasn't just physical. It came from drifting without an anchor. Solitude creates space for this inner connection. It invites the questions that matter. And when those questions are met with silence, something holy often answers back. Finally, there's one last habit that might surprise you: learning how to create beauty and meaning in the quiet moments no one else sees. Many people believe that their most creative years are behind them, that once the job ends, the kids are grown, and the big adventures are over. There's not much left to contribute. But the truth is, some of the most profound beauty ever created has come from older hands, working in solitude. When the noise fades, when the rush ends, what remains is space. And for those who know how to use it, that space becomes sacred. Helen never called herself an artist, but in the last 20 years of her life, she created things more powerful than any masterpiece in a gallery. She wrote letters that brought people to tears. She pressed flowers into pages with handwritten poems. She recorded stories from her childhood into a small recorder, leaving a legacy of voice for her grandchildren. Her home, though small, was full of evidence that her days mattered, that they were not just passed, they were used. George, though gifted with his hands, stopped building once he retired. The tools stayed in the garage. Ideas came and went, but he told himself they didn't matter. Who would care, he'd say. Over time, the days blurred. One week looked like the next. And slowly, his energy faded. Not because of age, but because of a lack of expression. A study published in the Journals of Gerontology found that creative engagement in older adults is associated with increased cognitive function, better emotional health, and even reduced mortality rates. But this creativity doesn't need to be public. It doesn't require applause. It needs only a quiet space and the willingness to begin. Solitude is the canvas. And whether through gardening, writing, sketching, singing, or storytelling, the act of creating becomes a declaration. I am still here. I still have something to give. So now you've seen it. Not just ideas, but patterns. Not just theories, but lives. The difference between a restless old age and a radiant one often begins in silence. We followed Helen and George not to judge, but to understand. Two people walking the same road, but choosing different rhythms. One found strength in solitude. The other feared it, resisted it, and slowly faded into the background of his own life. And that's the truth so many overlook. After 60, solitude doesn't shrink your life. It can become the very space where life begins again. You've seen how quiet spaces calm the nervous system, how clarity emerges when noise falls away, how emotional healing requires stillness, not avoidance, how real connection grows from within, how peace inside the mind translates into health inside the body, how spiritual grounding becomes a compass, and how creative expression doesn't retire. It awakens if we allow it the room to breathe. The choice now is yours. You can fill your days with noise, busyness, and distraction. You can keep running from the mirror, the silence, the questions that only you can answer. Or you can begin today to turn towards solitude, not as a punishment. Not as something to survive, but as a companion, a teacher. A quiet friend who has been waiting for you all along. Sit with your own thoughts. Walk without your phone. Write something no one else will read. Let your days be simple. Let your breath be slow. Because it's in those moments, the ones that feel empty to the outside world, that something eternal begins to rise inside you. And maybe, just maybe, the last chapter of your life will be the most honest, most beautiful, and most alive of them all. If something in this message spoke to you, I invite you now. Leave a comment below. Like this video to help others find it. Subscribe for more content like this, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a moment of wisdom. Because the path to longevity begins in silence.